Hey everybody, it's just Steve here, and I have found another interesting person to hang out with today, and her name is Maria Romano. Maria, welcome aboard.
Thank you for having me, Steve. I'm so thrilled to be part of your community.
Awesome. Yeah, well, we're excited to chat with you. I've seen some of your stuff out on Facebook. I thought, well, she seems like an interesting person. Let's talk with her. So where are you calling in from? Where are you located now? What's kind of going on?
I am in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Which is interesting, right? So I'm a poker player. I have a poker podcast, and so I'm plugged in pretty well with the Las Vegas community. And it's like a ghost town there. It's so eerie to see like pictures of the strip and the sign, and just nobody's there.
I took my grandkids down the strip a week ago, and it was different, that's for sure. But you know what? Some of the hotels now have beautiful signs up that says, healthy, be healthy, we're committed to you, things like that. I want to go back in the evening over the next couple of weeks, because I know the strip's going to be closed for just a little while longer.
Yeah.
And I'm sure some of those gamblers out there have to be jonesing, right? Because you're not able to gamble. Online you can.
Well, you can in some places. Like I'm in Minnesota where it's not regulated, so there's you can still do some of it, but yeah, I think there's a lot of poker players that are. There's the true gamblers. The poker players sort of do. It's kind of a different deal, but yeah, part of it is the gamble, the gaming, but it's also the community part of it too. You kind of get used to being out there and hanging out with other people, and it's just that's just gone.
It's interesting because I've been here for 43 years. I'm originally a transplant from the Bronx, New York. You probably still hear some of my dialect there.
I hear it.
Yeah, and you're right. It is that, it's interesting. When I came out here, it was about 160,000 people. But now it's 2.5 million people, and probably even more so after everything's all over with soon. You're going to see more of a boom coming from California, I think, because the cost of living here is less expensive. But it's really a small community in a lot of ways, which is interesting.
Yeah, a lot of people mention that live there. Say, you'd be surprised at sort of the feel of the actual community of the broader town, not just sort of at the casinos. So let's talk a little bit about kind of who are you? We'll dig a little bit into we'll see where the conversation goes, I guess. But let's start with like what's your deal? Like, how do you occupy your time?
Well, I am Maria Romano, so that's who I am.
I am. And
it's taken me a long time to get to where I am today. Actually, who am I? I think throughout your life we take on a lot of different roles, right? We start off as somebody's kid somewhere along the line, and then we go to work for somebody. We get married, we have children, so we become, either a wife, a husband, a mom, a dad, and then grandparents, and we're in the world, maybe in our workforce, our profession. But it's interesting because what I do to occupy my time, we sold our rent-a-car company, Frank, my late husband, and I, in 2010. We got out just by the skin of our teeth. As you know, what happened in 2008, the market just came crumbling down. And I went to a wedding in Las Vegas in 2009, and I saw a woman perform a ceremony. And I said, I could do that. So what I do to occupy my time is I marry people when we're able to get married. And, right now with this socially distancing, right, we're not able to do that. So that's what I do. That's one of the things I do. Besides, I volunteer. I work with the Clark County Neighborhood Justice Center. I also volunteer my time as a mediator in the small claims court or in, their offices, which is very interesting because mediation services are such a must, and they do keep the cost down for people instead of using attorneys. I exercise. I love to eat. I like to drink. And I also developed a course for baby boomers, people over 50, a little younger than baby boomers, like myself, that have been in a long-term relationship, and then all of a sudden you're either divorced or you're widowed. I'm a widow. Or a widower, and you need to get out in the dating world, because when you've been out of the dating world for 3.5 decades, you can get your ass kicked. So I developed something, and that's what I do to occupy my time, besides family, and having a good time with family and friends.
That's a lot of things. A lot of things going on here. A lot to kind of unpack.
Yeah, but you know what? I think you need to do that in your life. You get to a certain age, I'm in my 60s, and you can either sit back and say, okay, I'm going to sit back and relax. But really, what is relaxing all about?
Well,
what does that get you?
It's different for everybody, right? Relaxing is different for everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've turned down jobs before because they wanted me to lead some marketing piece where basically the marketing promotion was, the ultimate goal in life is to be able to sit on the beach with your feet up on the sand. And I think that's great for some people, but it's like, that's not my vision for what my life looks like. So it's hard for me to actually get passionate about it. So I think we all have a different perspective on what relaxing actually looks like. I'm curious, this is a tremendous story. I'm kind of curious if you thought about, like, what are kind of the common themes running through this? So I look at the things that you're doing. So you're marrying people because that seems like it'd be fun to do, kind of be involved in their story of love, the neighborhood justice center, the mediation services, the helping people that have been recently single. What are what's the theme that's kind of running through that? Like, what is the core, do you think, kind of behind all of that? Or what's welling up in you? What's the passion? What's the felt need? What's kind of the theme running in there?
You're right. There is a theme that's running in there. First of all, the theme is love. One of the things, and the synergy of coming together. There's a commonality with love, whether you're in love and you want to, make a commitment to that person, whether it's a formal commitment or just, a regular commitment ceremony. That's one theme. Finding love again, of course, is something else. And that's, again, finding love. Because I think we live longer, we're healthier, we're happier. But on the mediation side, it's a commonality to be able to handle conflict and turn that conflict into something that then where there's an agreement. And I think so there's a bit of mediation, marriages, love. It's kind of hand in hand.
Yeah. And so where does that
MML.
So where does that come from? Like, why do you think that's such a driving force in your life? Like, I mean, we all want love. We all are excited when other people find love. But for you, you've sort of made it your life. You said, I'm going to build my life, my career, my identity in some ways around this idea of finding love and being happy in a loving relationship, or helping reconcile broken relationships or things like that. I'm curious, why do you think that's the avenue that you went? You're clearly very bright. You could be doing a ton of different things, but you've sort of centered your life around this notion.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because first of all, handling conflict when you get to mediation, it's not just mediation with divorce. It's mediation with there could be a community mediation. Somebody could be angry because somebody's dog is barking, or there can be a monetary issue, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So I think on the mediation side, for me, one of the things is I think conflict, to have conflict then creates anxiety, which creates stress and tension. So that's one thing, as I've always believed in, trying to minimize that in your life. And I think that goes back to also as a child, my family, my father and mother divorced. It was in the 60s. Now in the 60s, that was sort of taboo in an Italian family. Mm. And I could remember them fighting, and I did not enjoy that arguing. So when it comes to that, I think that's probably where that mediation comes in, because I'd like to see the communication occur so you can resolve the conflict without actually having to get a little too passionate with how you feel. Mm. So that's probably one thing that probably stems from that. And then as far as, marriage, I mean, I was married with my husband for 35 years. And then to wake up one day and say, gosh, I'm no longer a Mrs. Steve. I went from a Mrs. to a Miss.
Yeah. Right.
I was no longer a +1 to events. I'm a just one. And your life changes when you go through a divorce, when you go through a death, because you lose some of your maybe identity, but you also lose friends. You can lose family. You can lose a way of life. That was a big deal to me. I have to say that was a big deal when I recognized that. But see, my late husband had a heart transplant in 1997. Mm-hmm. So we knew he was always on borrowed time. And I think it's like anybody that's ill, when you think you're prepared, and when it comes, you're not prepared. And then when I got back in the dating world, it was really difficult, because there's a stigma with your age. Okay. Is a stigma. You also, not a stigma, you know what it's like when you're in a relationship, and you know what it takes, and you know what the commitment is. So, and I saw that there were a lot of people struggling out there. So that's what made me gravitate into trying to help people to find love again. It's so interesting because I love doing that. I'm not a matchmaker. I just get them ready. And yet I'm just like the shoemaker's kids. I help you, right? I make, but I don't have a relationship yet. I'm too busy helping everybody. Right. And then the marriage side, I mean, really, what's greater than being part of somebody's significant day? I mean, that's profound.
I love that. That's so well said. And, I think about that. I've been married for 28 years, and I think about that. What if we were to wake up one day, or what if I were to wake up one day and be single? Like, it would just see obviously be very sad and a lot of grief. But part of that stage, then what's next? Because you do, like you're saying, you get used to a certain rhythm of life, a certain identity. You're connected to people you otherwise wouldn't be connected with. And that's hard. It is hard to imagine. And I think probably a lot of us listening are saying, well, yeah, it's hard to imagine. I've never been through that. But there probably are people out there that are saying, that is my story. That is, and I am struggling with this sort of piece. So what's the first, what sort of advice do you give to somebody, or what's the first thing that you can tell somebody, either it's self-care, or maybe they're saying now, okay, I think I'm ready to maybe do this. I don't know. I'm scared to death. How do you start to work with somebody in that situation?
Well, and you said that it's very interesting you say that, because you're right, because people don't know what to do, especially when they've been in a long-term relationship. It's a shock to them, no matter what the situation is. And what I recommend, and I suggest to people, because you can only suggest or recommend, you can't tell them what to do.
Especially when we're older, right? We've had life experience. We're not as pliable as we once were when we were 20.
I like that. We're not as pliable. We're not. Right. We're not. It's true. It's very true. But sometimes when you spoon feed somebody, you can get them to not alter their way of thinking, but looking at life a little differently. Because you're going to have a segment of people that didn't say, "Hey, listen, I had the love of my life. I'm never going to find a good person." Well, that's not true. There are a lot of good people out there. You're a good person, so you should start off with that. And some people feel they're too old, Steve. And really, love has no age limits, which people shouldn't use that as something that should stop them from finding love. And some people feel that they're not worthy. So you have to start with that. But I recommend too, especially when you think you're ready to go find love again, there's a couple of things I do recommend, is that you take the time, because you might be in a stage of life where you're not wearing a lot of different hats. You don't have a role of a wife, a partner in life. And you might be also segueing out into your profession. You could be deciding to retire. So you need to take the time to really work on who you are, focusing on the inner self. That is so important. Self-love, self-kindness, forgive yourself too, things like that. And then think about your past relationships, because I come across a lot of more people that are divorced, and not just divorced once, but a couple of times. And really think about your past relationships, what worked, what didn't work, what did you do that actually had a hand in the demise in the relationship? And then look at it and say, what could I have done differently? And I think once you shed those relationships residuals, and I call it like a dysfunctional detoxing, and start looking at yourself and what you could, or what you're attracting, then you can make a decision to say, okay, in the next half of my life, because you've lived more life than you're going to live, right? How are you going to live the rest of it? And since we're living longer, we're healthier, it's important. You're looking for a partner. You want somebody that's going to be there for you. And that's the key thing. So those are the things that I really have them dig deep first. But everybody, it's interesting, everybody wants to go from A to Z right away and not stop along the way. And they don't realize you really need to work on who you are.
I love that. And I think it sounds a lot like doing the deep work of self-awareness, which I think is something a lot of people don't naturally do anyway for life. But I think it feels like in the security of a long-term relationship, regardless of how that ends, whether it's through death or through divorce or whatever, it feels like, we've sort of lost the ability to be self-aware, because we just kind of are aware of our relationship and our lives together, right? So that's what it feels like. It's kind of like helping people become self-aware and not from just a surface level, but actually digging deep to that next level question, right? Like how did this thing end, and then why? Kind of asking yourself why repeatedly to actually figure out the core.
You're absolutely right. That is so true, Steve, is getting into the core. And then once you get into the core and work on who you are, then you need to start loving yourself again. And that's not an easy process.
Yeah.
It's another self-awareness and digging deep. And that's where you have to have that self-kindness and self-compassion and forgive yourself. But then when you tie it all in together, then you have to start developing the confidence again so that you have the charisma, and I call it the rock yourself part, where you step into your shoes and you love yourself from roots to boots, although my roots are going to be showing pretty soon. But really, it's important. And really, really get to really appreciate who you are. I heard a great little analogy by the late Maya Angelou, and she said something that I use this as well. And what she said was whenever you're walking into a situation and you just don't feel as confident, make sure you take your tribe with you, the village, and imagine the people that have been in your life, they could have passed, or people that are still living presently, and just imagine them with you, like your entourage, your village, your tribe, and just surround yourself with those people that are your biggest cheerleaders. And once I started doing that, because we walk into, whether it's going on a first date, whether it's just going to meet new people, or in my case, if I'm even meeting new clients, for example, couples that I'm going to potentially marry, it's like, are they going to like me? Forget about them liking you. It's a matter of just being confident with who you are. I think that what's great about this time of my life, and I'm sure there are a lot of people out there, that we feel confident about who we are. And that's what people like to see. And confidence is sexy.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, it's just there's so much truth in there. But I think as somebody who's struggled with confidence my whole life, that's one of those things where it rings true to me. And that if you are confident, people are attracted to that, or your message gets delivered and gets received in a much more positive fashion. Or in a relationship perspective, who wants to be in a relationship with somebody who's not confident? But it's hard for somebody who struggles with confidence to just be confident. It's hard to just say, well, just be confident. That's like saying, well, just learn how to multiply 2 by 2. It's not, it's deeper than that, right? Usually it's rooted in something else. So how do you help people that, you say you need to be more confident, but they're just not? How do you help them overcome that? And, I'm starting to bridge the gap from just relationship, just marriage, to kind of broader life guidance in a sense. But how do you help people take that step to become more confident when they're not naturally there?
Yes, and that is something that does take time to master. And again, the self-awareness and digging deep. So when you work on who you are and understand who you are and think about the relationships you've had in the past, whether it's a personal relationship or dig deep, okay, because sometimes we've had experiences that are not so pleasant, and and experiences that are, and then add that to the fact that then you need to start loving yourself. And that's a process, falling in and out of love. You've heard that expression?
Yeah.
That's what happens. We do. We fall in and out of love with ourselves. And even though we love ourselves, we need to then develop that romance part with ourselves. And that's a process of thinking about what qualities you have that really attract other people. And one of the analogies that I like to use is just take a moment and close your eyes and think about somebody that you love. And it doesn't have to be a romantic love, but if you just take a moment and do that, and what you see is not the physical of that person that you love. It's their qualities, it's their aura. And that's what people need to learn to love about themselves. Then when you take all that, and you put this process together, and you rock yourself, and you really get to love yourself, and you take time to really work on that. And that's something that you need to do. I think that self-love, every day. And what I recommend is think about situations in the past when you've walked into situations where you don't feel confident, Maybe it's a business situation where you feel everybody in the room's a lot smarter than you. Gosh, how many times did I feel that way?
Mm-hmm.
Or you walk into a gym and think everybody looks like they're ready to be put on a fashion magazine and not me. And the only one that felt that way was you. Right? It's getting back to falling in love with you and not self-sabotaging. So it is a process that you need to do, and you just need to constantly reassure yourself. And I tell clients that anytime you have a negative thought, you got to think of three fabulous, great things. As you keep moving forward, you do feel confident. And it's not just in the dating world, Steve. It's in whatever you do in life. And I think that's the key thing. But it is a constant work in progress.
Because it feels like, but I agree. Self-love, self-confidence, all those things are critical to confidence, to having success, to living the kind of life that you want to live versus having other people, put their life on you. And it feels like maybe in the context of a long-term relationship, we can become lazy in that because we sort of, we have our identity, we have our security, we have our confidence. I've got somebody who loves me. I'm not really worried about that. So I think it's very easy to get lazy in our own self-love, just like it's easy to get lazy in loving intentionally the other person, because we settle into our relationship. So it feels like this situation that you're talking about, where all of a sudden that relationship is just gone. It feels like it's even a bigger impact on our ability to self-love because we've gotten lazy with that. We haven't been exercising that muscle of loving ourselves.
Yes, you are right. You hit the nail right on the head with what you said. And it just, one thing is I did forget to fail to mention is I also speak about reigniting the passion in your relationship, because you want to find love, and then you found love and you're in a relationship. So now what happens? Well, one of the lines I use in my ceremonies is the courtship should not end with the honeymoon. It should continue throughout the marriage. It's part of a beautiful poem called The Art of a Marriage by Wilfred A. Peterson. And there are times, we all do. And I think back in my relationship, we take it for granted. And it's sometimes you just need to sit back and take the time and go back to your commitment that you made to your partner. I mean, when you made the commitment, you committed to be their biggest coach, their biggest cheerleader, their best friend. And then what happens in time is, are you still their biggest coach? Are you still their biggest cheerleader?
Yeah.
Are you their best friend? Or are you their biggest critic? And that's what happens, and it can happen. And then, communication's just a big process as well, is so important. And then having courage to stay in relationships.
So how do we take all this? So a lot of people that are listening are going, man, this is perfect for me. This is hitting the nail on the head. This is my situation in life. But there's going to be a large group of people, whether because they're younger, they haven't been in relationships, there maybe seem like they feel like they're not interested in relationships, or they feel self-confident, whatever it is, they're feeling like this really isn't up my alley, but they're still listening. So thank you for still listening and sticking with us. Because now I want to ask you, so what's kind of the overriding truth in all of this that you think could apply to all of humanity, regardless of whether you're in a deep relationship, regardless of whether you've just lost a long-term relationship? I'm hearing a lot of messages that I think could be applied to everybody. So I want to make sure that people that are listening are saying, okay, what can I take out of the wisdom that Maria has?
Well, first, yes, and it's true, because people are thinking, well, I might, I'm not in a relationship, but that doesn't mean that you're never going to be in a relationship. And it doesn't have to be a personal or romantic. It could be a professional relationship or just a regular friendship. You need to go back and still apply the rules. Okay, the rules still apply as if you were out there, for example, like when I talk about people that are finding love again, but you use the fundamentals of knowing who you are, because when you know who you are, again, no matter where you're at in life, pre-relationship, post-relationship, you need to be true to who you are and be authentic to you, and always work on you and never put that aside, as well as loving yourself, and then putting it all together and being confident with who you are. And then when you are in a relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship or professional relationship, it's important to have what I call the 3 C's. You need to be able to continue with the commitment, because whether it's business, it's a commitment, right?
Yeah, right.
And if communication, so key, because if you don't communicate, and that happens, sometimes we cast things aside, we don't want to communicate. And then also having courage to say, hey, something is not right. What can we do to straighten it out, whether it's personally or professionally? There are times when we all have white elephants in the room, Steve, and we don't want to address it. And I think the person that takes the first step to address it also then communicates that they're confident. They're confident to be able to withstand whatever the answer is going to be or whatever they hear. So that in itself, so you can take all these things and use these rules and apply them in whatever is going on in your life. And that will just help you minimize getting back to mitigating the damages of having conflict. Because once you're able to address that, you'll be stress-free. And guess what? You won't need to go to a plastic surgeon and have a facelift or Botox. You'll be looking great.
Well, I love that. That's so good, I think, for all of us. So what about the people that are there saying, well, that all sounds great. I totally buy into this. I get it. I want to be more confident. I want to be committed. I want to have good communication. I want to have courage, but I just feel like I don't really feel like I have the skill set to do that. Or I can't really walk it alone. And I don't really have somebody, right obviously with me to help me with this. Like what do I do? Do I see a therapist? What do I do when I'm feeling kind of alone in this, even though mentally I think I agree with you, but I don't feel like I have the skill set to do that myself.
Well, that's a really good point. And this is what I would suggest when people ask me that. First of all, if there is something in your life that you're having some issues with and you just don't seem to get through it or can't resolve it, definitely seek out a therapist. I think that's the first thing. Or maybe clergy or somebody that you feel close to. But I really think it's got to be somebody that is objective, that can give you some really good sound advice or just be a good listener. And that's hard when could be your family or your friends. That's a little difficult at times. And that's what I think is important. I think it's always important to surround yourself with people that are coaches in your life, people that are mentors, that you can look to them. But again, if you need to have that professional help, go for it. Because if people have situations and they need to get through it, it could be whatever it is. It's a grief process, and it's a matter of going through it. It doesn't have to be a loss of a loved one. It could be a loss of, a lifestyle, a loss of a pet. It could be going through something that you went through, maybe medically, and have overcome it. So definitely. And then that's what I definitely recommend you do that. And then I also, recommend that spiritually you need to really tap into your spiritual side, no matter what your beliefs are, because that also will give you some great guidance.
I love it. So finding somebody else, I think sometimes we look at that, we say, oh, that's a sign of weakness that I need to go see a professional. And I'm like, okay, so what? Like we all have weaknesses, right? And I don't think it is a sign of weakness. I think it's a sign of strength and confidence. But I think there's this sense from a lot of people like, well, I don't need that help. Well, yeah, you do. And that's okay. I think it's not about whether you need it or not. It's about whether it's okay to seek assistance. I talk about this all the time, how the greatest golfers in the world have a swing coach, and the greatest LeBron James has a shooting coach. The greatest people in the world have people to come alongside of them and support them. And if you're feeling like life isn't what it could be or what you want it to be, and you don't have an obvious circle of people that can help you get there, get some help or have somebody come alongside of you, right?
Well, yes, and that's true. And even the greatest of the greats have coaches. And this is what I recommend is, you know what? Your car needs a tune-up once in a while. So does your mental health.
Yeah.
And I was that same way for a long time. And a few years ago, I found a great therapist. Oh my gosh, made all the difference in the world for me. And because I was at that generation where you don't necessarily reach out to somebody because that is a sign of weakness. And that means you've got some real bad issues. And that's not the case. And it's important. You need, that's self-care. That's exactly having, good mental health makes all the difference in the world.
Love it. So what about, we're in the middle of this crazy world right now. We've got the coronavirus going on, and I think a lot of people have had their lives rocked in significant ways. We've had our life rocked a little bit, but we're pretty lucky. We're sort of quarantined. We've lost some income, but, generally it's not been rocked. A lot of people have had their worlds just rocked, whether that's through death, through sickness, through losses of jobs, losses of income. There's a lot of people kind of going through a lot of stuff. right now. And it feels like what you're talking about in the context of, relationship is actually applicable to people that are going through the rocky times that we're having right now in the world. And I'd love to get your perspective on either advice or encouragement or whatever it is for the people that are really walking through some tough stuff now.
Well, I think you have a couple. Yeah, it's a lot to digest.
It is.
So right. And this COVID-19 has definitely changed the scope, and it's a big transition. I think of the story, if you go back to Adam and Eve, and when Adam and Eve were walking out of the garden, he turned around and said, honey, I think we're in transition. We are in a transition right now. And I think the world is going to change dramatically in lots of ways for us because of this. And actually, when we look back in history, this is all going to be definitely for the betterment of the world and our society. It's just unfortunate we're going through this at this time. And especially in Las Vegas, to see that we have over 300,000 hotel rooms that are empty. Yeah. And that when you think about every hotel room, I think employs about 4 or 5 people. So just add the numbers up to that. It's huge when you think about it. And that's just not here. It's all over. And there are people that are thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to make it? I heard a woman on TV that was just crying because she couldn't afford to buy the pack of diapers for the baby. Mm-hmm. And she actually was going to take just some diapers out of the bag at the store and just put them in her bag. This is a desperation that you see out there. So from a standpoint, I think those of us that have, we need to give. We definitely need to give to those people. And also for those that are in relationships and healthy and happy, be so thankful for that. And if you've lost a loved one, gosh, my heart just, it goes out to you. But one of the things is what I really think is going to happen is we're going to be more in touch with who we are and not by the things that define us. And my late husband taught me something, because we went through a lot of peaks and valleys in our lives where we've had quite a bit of accumulated wealth, and then we lost it, and then tried to get back up there again. Never quite get back to it was because you have to get to a point where you need to not cry for something that can cry for you. And that is so important. So cry, yes, if your health isn't good, that's something worth crying for. You lose a loved one, that's something worth crying for, a pet. But don't cry for anything that you lose in the way of a monetary. You'll get that as long as you have your health, Steve. That's everything. And you know that. How many people you know in life that have amassed fortunes? Look at Steve Jobs. He couldn't get past the pancreatic cancer. Mm-hmm. He was a man, right? That all the money in the world can't give you what you have is health. When you have health, you'll be happy. And you'll find love. You can even find love today in this environment.
Oh, that's so good.
Just virtually.
Right, just virtually now. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. I think you and I have a few things in common. One of the things that I do some weddings as well, and I love doing them. And I've actually got one coming up here in a couple of days, which is sort of odd. How we're going to pull that off. It's a small wedding. I've already told them, I'm going to be this far away, and it's just, if you're so comfortable with this, we're not doing it virtually. We're going to do it in somebody's backyard, but very well spaced out in a small wedding, and it's super interesting. But there's sort of I'm excited to kind of look back on that as love continues, relationships continue, life continues. It just looks different amidst this whole overarching global pandemic. There's still things that are moving forward.
Love is moving forward. When you talk about going to perform that wedding, so one of the things that I work with the Maverick helicopters, and we fly to the Grand Canyon, and we land down in the area, and the couple is usually probably about 2 car lengths away from me anyway, because we have them in the video. So you can pull it off. It's okay. Somebody videos it. They don't necessarily have you in it, and it's a special moment. That's great. That's wonderful to do that, especially in the midst of all this. Oh. Right.
That's I think a lot of people would say, well, just delay it, just cancel it, just whatever. And that's, of course, some people's decision to do that. That's fine. But there's something about, I don't know why it has triggered so much emotion in me, but it sort of is that beauty of, here's sort of the phoenix rising from the ashes. Here's the beauty moving forward in the midst of destruction. It's almost like it's like the people playing piano in the middle of a war zone, or people in their balconies in Italy doing music together. I mean, there's something beautiful about that in the midst of chaos.
You know what? What's beautiful right now is at least nobody seems to be at odds with each other at this point, which is nice. I mean, there's almost a peace, and it's a shame that it has to come with this price.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm hoping, like you, that sort of we're better on the other side of this thing. We're certainly, if we lean into it, if we embrace it, if we engage with it, and try to take the goodness that's out of it, I think we are going to be a better people, individually and collectively, on the other side of this. The problem is that, like you said, that's great for us. It's hard for a lot of the people that are, what they're going through. They will never be the same, and it's going to be very hard for that to be positive. But I do think collectively, the things that I'm seeing on social media with people, playing with their kids more than they ever had before, and some of those things, I just hope people lean into it, take advantage of a really hard situation, and sort of the old cliche, make lemonade out of the lemons.
It's true. And I'll tell you, I'm spending lots of time with my grandkids, and I'm enjoying it as well. Working out a lot more. I don't want to put on that freshman 20 pounds, which can happen, right?
Yeah.
And you know what the good thing is too, is for my community out here, for me and what I do, is I've always tried to get people to put themselves out there online on the dating side, but also to utilize the Zoom platform or FaceTime. Yeah. So this really just more or less reinforces that you can get out there and meet people. And I recommend meeting people and then setting up a Zoom call before you even go meet them. And this is before this COVID-19 situation occurred. So, but it still, then you feel comfortable, like you've developed a relationship.
Right.
And you see what their surroundings are like. But also it keeps you in touch with somebody that you love, whether it's Zoom, Skype, or whatever platform you use, which I think a lot of us are now, because the world has paused, is we're able to reach out and tell somebody, hey, I love you.
Right.
I'm
right.
I should really spend more time.
Yeah, the technology is I mean, it's a good time in history to have this technology for sure. And I know I've used it, recently to just make space available for people that want to talk about it, even just strangers. So, just say, hey, I'm going to be just holding some open hours. If you just want to come on here and just talk about life, talk about what you're thinking about. There's no agenda. And so we get a small group of people, just they don't know each other, but they come on and they just talk about what it's like for them. And you kind of build a relationship, and it's sort of a healing sort of thing. And it helps people feel like they're not in it together. So I think whether it's, finding a group like that, so doing that, whether it's strangers, logging into some of these live concerts that people are doing. Yes. There's people all over the world that are saying, here's my gift. I'm trapped at home, but I play piano. Here you go. Here's my gift to you if you want to join in, or doing something specific where you say, I'm going to get a hold of these 4 friends. And a lot of these platforms are free, and people can jump on and use them. And I just think it's a great tool to kind of keep that connection going and even build connections in the middle of this thing.
And that is, what you say is so true, because some of us have that same mindset like you, giving service back free, okay? And that's the key thing: free concerts, free coaching, and that's wonderful. And then you have a portion of the world that's still out there trying to sell you something. Right. Leave it at home. Leave it at home. Forget that for now. Just let life be, and just share whatever you have, whatever gift you have, share it. Money will come. That comes, and believe me, I always feel the universe will take care of you when you come from a place of giving, and that's the key thing. And I'm sure you see it, Steve. I'm sure you see things come across your desk. Like, really? You're charging right now? Please.
For sure. But I also feel, I feel the weight of that on my own side though too. It's like the temptation to charge, because I'm in the place where, okay, I left the corporate world 1.5 years ago, so gave up all my income, and now all of the things I do are predicated on large group gatherings, whether it's speaking or some of these other things that I'm doing, and those are all gone away. So I can see the pressure going, well, I need to monetize this somehow. I need to make money. And so I'm not saying that. I think some people are they're just going after, like, this is an opportunity, and but I can sense the pressure, but yet saying, yeah, but even with what we're going through, I'm still better off than 95% of the people in the world. So I need to just be giving my gift for free. So, but there is, for me, I know I can feel that tension a little bit, but clearly I think what I'm hearing from you, there are people that are just saying, man, this is an opportunity where I can sell toilet paper for $20 a roll, or I can charge my services because people are desperate. That is the stuff that I'm like, ugh. And I think that's going to do some long-term damage to those folks as people wake up on the other side of this thing and go, all right, you were taking advantage of us. On the flip side, my business is going elsewhere.
That, you know what, that is so true. We all feel the pressure, but I kind of feel I'm on this bus, and I'm not driving the bus, and you're not driving the bus, and we just have to kind of wait until the bus decides to stop and wherever it's at. And one of the things I read a few weeks ago, before all of this COVID-19 happens, people live longer when you give of yourself and service of yourself. So just think about those people that you're building in your community right now. And you're going to live a hell of a lot longer. So I guess you better make a lot of money so you can live until you're 125.
Right. Oh, my kid's going to be a computer programmer, so hopefully he's my retirement plan, so I should be okay.
Good for you. Good for you.
That's my 401k plan, is my child. Well, we're starting to hit time here a little bit, but I want to circle back to one thing you talked about. We talked early on about, well, how do you think you got into kind of the relationship thing, or what were some of the core drivers? And you mentioned your mother and your father's divorce, and maybe that influenced you. Maybe that kind of brought you down the road a little bit as you go. But now that you're kind of on this end of it, now that you've lived a good chunk of life, how do you think that is still impacting you today? As you look back on that now, do you see that as still sort of a triggering thing? Do you feel like there's still some sort of impact there in how you do things, or kind of maybe whether it's that specific event or your childhood in general? How do you feel like your childhood has informed your current lens that you look at life through?
Well, I think that we all listen. There are always dysfunction in any family, any relationships in general. So it's a matter of how you decompartmentalize that. And for myself, and maybe some of the listeners out there, when my parents divorced, again, that was in the 60s. That was considered to be like taboo. Okay. So that for me was a big embarrassment but again, I had no bearing on them divorcing. That was something that didn't work out. And as I look back on it, when I think the key thing is being able to communicate. And we all, and I don't mean communicate by just, verbalizing, but also listening, and also the way active listening versus inactive listening. So it really has definitely it's touched me in a lot of ways where communication is so key for me, where it's become to the point where it's acute at this point in time, because I feel that when you lack that, and maybe that's what's come out of that, and also people's emotions, part of communication is your body language, which we see that too in mediation. When people come in, right, there's sometimes they're just closed up, or they're just hostile. So the same thing. So I'm really very much in tune to how people communicate, and that's probably was a big deal for me.
Yeah. Well, if you could snap your fingers now, and you could say, okay, I want to wish one thing for everybody who's listening to this podcast. What do you wish for everybody this podcast that they could have, whether that's inside themselves, whether it's material in the world, or whatever that is? What do you wish everybody could experience or have? I like putting people on the spot, man. See, this is why I don't do prepared things.
One word.
One word? No, it doesn't have to be one word. It can be. Okay. It can be whatever you want. One thought.
This is what my wish would be for everyone. Yeah. For everyone to be at peace with themselves and be at peace with what's happening around them today. That's my one wish. And to just accept what's happening, but then again, to also take the initiative to enjoy your life and to be able to pursue whatever dreams and goals you have, because you know what? Now's the time. Okay, every day that you live is an experience, but it's one day closer to where you're going to leave the present life. So make the most out of it.
Dude, let's go drop the mic, man. We should just cut it off right there and end it. That's really good. I love that so much. So folks are listening right now. They're saying, all right, I'm resonating with Maria. I love what she's doing. I'd love to connect with her, or at least kind of stay in touch some way, shape, or form. How do people connect with you?
Well, gosh, I'm on Facebook under Maria Romano. at trueloveknots, KNOTS.com. I'm also at Twitter at True Love Knots, as well as Instagram and in LinkedIn. And just feel free, to reach out to me. My email is maria@trueloveknots.com. I'd love to hear from people. I'd love to hear about their stories, how they found love, or if they're dating virtually, what kind of dates they've had on virtual dates. And also people that are, that are out there that are still single, to know that they're on the right path.
I love that so much. So we're gonna come back to you. We're gonna have to wrap up here, but we're gonna come back to you to kind of close us off with either a favorite quote or final words. But real quick, if you like what you're hearing, if you want to support the stuff that I'm doing with the podcast, the writing, the speaking, a few things that you can do to help me out. Like, rate, review the episode wherever you're listening right now. Just like it, rate it, review it, subscribe if that's an option for you. But connect with me on social media. You can go to stevefredlund.com, sign up for the newsletter. And you can support the show at patreon.com/stevefredlund if you are so inclined. But with that, let's come back to the fabulous Maria, who's going to close us off.
All right. The quote. One of the quotes I love, and it's a Mark Twain quote. Dance like nobody's watching. Sing like nobody's listening. Love like you've never been hurt. Live like you're on heaven, not just earth.
Oh, that's so good. Well, with that, Maria, thank you so much for being here. We'll be in touch, and I know our folks are going to love what you had to say.
Thank you.